Crazy indeed. Yes, Traoré released 15 million rabbits at once into the desert of his country. But the question is, why was this move made, and why are the world's leading experts paying attention to this plan, and will this decision change the fate of Burkina Faso or put the country in a new problem? All of this will be answered in today's video, so watch until the end because this video is going to be interesting. According to Burkina Faso's Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, President Ibrahim Traoré announced in Ouagadougou that his government had launched an unprecedented environmental restoration project, the release of 15 million rabbits into designated desert zones. Officials stated the goal was to use the animals' natural burrowing to soften compacted soil, improve water retention, and revive arid farmland without relying on costly foreign machinery. The project, developed with Burkinabe scientists, is projected to cover over 3,000 square kilometers in the next 5 years. International environmental bodies have called it one of the boldest ecological experiments in Africa this decade. The desert wind carried the smell of dust and silence that morning. In the village of Arbinda, elders gathered under the shade of a lone baobab, their eyes fixed on the horizon where trucks rolled in, each cage filled with a restless wave of fur and heartbeat. President Ibrahim Traoré had arrived not in the armor of a military parade, but in the plain fatigues of a man who knew the soil as well as the battlefield. His boots sank slightly into the cracked earth as he stepped down. The air trembled with anticipation. 15 million, one villager whispered, as if uttering a number that belonged to legends. Traoré didn't speak immediately. He let the sight of the animals speak first, ears twitching, paws shifting, eyes bright against the harsh sun. Behind him, maps were pinned to a makeshift wooden board, showing the spreading scars of desertification across Burkina Faso. Circles marked the zones where the rabbits would begin their work. "This is not charity," Traoré finally said, his voice carrying over the gathering. "This is liberation for the land." He reminded them how foreign engineers had once promised to rehabilitate these lands with machines that cost more than the nation's annual education budget. How aid contracts came with fine print, always pulling the country deeper into dependency. But this was different. The rabbits, chosen from hardy local breeds, could survive the heat, dig deep burrows, and in doing so, break the earth's crust, allowing seeds to take root and rainwater to seep in. Scientists estimated that in just 3 seasons, certain regions could see the return of wild grasses and small farming plots. Critics abroad called it reckless, an ecological disaster waiting to happen, warned a French agricultural columnist. Traoré answered without flinching, "You think survival is reckless? We have been reckless for decades, reckless in letting others decide our fate." The cages opened. A rush of movement spilled into the sand. The rabbits darted in all directions, their tiny feet beginning the slow, invisible work of change. And in that moment, beneath the African sun, even the skeptics fell silent. By sunset, the rabbits had already vanished into the dunes and low shrubs, leaving behind only the faint imprints of their paws in the sand. The villagers lingered, watching the horizon, as if expecting some immediate miracle green shoots bursting from the ground overnight. But Traoré knew this was a battle fought in years, not hours. That evening, he sat by a small fire with local leaders, maps spread out once again, the flickering light casting shifting shadows over the contours of Burkina Faso. He pointed to regions once fertile, now skeletal in their barrenness. "Every grain of sand here," he said, "is a record of neglect, not just from our own failings, but from decades of foreign policies that bled the land dry." An elder named Suleiman leaned forward, his voice slow but steady. "You are asking us to trust animals more than machines, Mr. President." Traoré smiled faintly. "I'm asking you to trust nature more than debt." In Ouagadougou, international reporters framed the project as a gamble from a young leader trying to cement his image. Satellite channels replayed footage of rabbits hopping through the desert, splicing it with skeptical commentary. But away from the cameras, the initiative was already stirring a quiet defiance. Volunteers, farmers, students, even retired soldiers began to sign up for zone guardianship programs. Their role: to protect the rabbits from predators, monitor the soil's condition, and plant hardy desert grasses where burrows appeared. It was a civic movement disguised as ecological maintenance. And beneath the surface, something deeper was shifting. For the first time in decades, rural communities felt they were part of a solution that was theirs, not a scheme drafted in Paris or Washington. One American environmental correspondent, after visiting the project, admitted off-camera, "This might be the most grassroots climate strategy I've seen in Africa, and that scares certain people." That was the unspoken truth. It wasn't just about the rabbits. It was about Burkina Faso taking a step away from the orbit of dependency toward a sovereignty written not in contracts, but in soil. The fire crackled, the maps lay open, and Traoré's eyes stayed fixed on the lines between desert and green, determined to redraw them. The weeks that followed brought dust storms, cold nights, and a constant hum of rumor. Across Burkina Faso, markets buzzed with talk of Traoré's rabbits. Some laughed, some cursed, some whispered with quiet hope. In the village of Seba, a teacher named Mariam kept a small notebook. Each morning, she walked the outskirts of the settlement, recording sightings: a flash of white fur here, a tunnel mouth there. Her students, curious and giggling, would follow her, holding tin cups of water to pour into the fresh burrows. It became a ritual, almost a game, but one wrapped in the seriousness of survival. By the second month, reports began filtering into Ouagadougou. Patches of earth, once hard as baked clay, were crumbling underfoot. Small pools from last week's rain hadn't evaporated overnight. These were microscopic victories, invisible to the casual observer, but to scientists, they were signals that the land was breathing again. President Ibrahim Traoré visited one of these early sites with a small delegation. He bent down, scooping a handful of loosened soil in his palm, letting it fall like powder. "This," he told his ministers, "is freedom in the making. Not given, not loaned, made." Foreign commentators, however, sharpened their knives. European agricultural boards questioned the sustainability of the method, warning of uncontrolled ecological side effects. Some even accused Traoré of staging the project as a political spectacle to distract from economic stagnation. Traoré didn't answer with press releases. Instead, he authorized a bold secondary measure, the Burkinabe Greenbelt Initiative, pairing the rabbit zones with mass planting of indigenous trees and grasses. Local cooperatives were given seed stock and modest funding, bypassing international NGOs entirely. The reaction from abroad was immediate. The World Agricultural Alliance issued a thinly veiled warning about unsupervised environmental projects risking regional stability. But inside Burkina Faso, the opposite was happening. Villages began competing to be selected for the next rabbit release. And slowly, the story stopped being about the animals. It became a tale about who decides the future of African land, those who live on it or those who profit from it. The heat shimmered over the dunes as Colonel Issa Kabore stepped from the armored vehicle. Before him stretched a flat, cracked expanse, once a grazing field, now a wasteland of dust. Beside him, President Ibrahim Traoré knelt and sifted the sand through his fingers. "This," he said quietly, "is where the rabbits will begin." A team of young conservationists emerged from the convoy, carrying crates lined with straw. Inside, the rabbits twitched nervously, their fur dusted from the long journey. When the doors opened, they hopped forward hesitantly, then scattered tiny shadows against a golden horizon. To the soldiers, it was just an odd assignment, but to Traoré, it was the first heartbeat of a desert reborn. By late afternoon, the air was alive with motion. The rabbits had found small hollows to shelter in, digging instinctively where the soil felt cooler. A few nibbled on the sparse sprigs of grass that clung stubbornly to life, while others explored the edges of shallow pits where water would soon be released. Traoré stood under a shade tarp, speaking with an agronomist from Ouagadougou. These animals, the expert explained, will feed on the invasive weeds, their waste enriching the sand with organic matter. In a year, this land will look different. A gust of wind sent a spiral of dust across the plain. Traoré watched it dissolve into the distance and said, "If we can turn this patch green, we can turn 100 more." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows, and the rabbits kept working, unaware they were part of history. Night fell quickly in the Sahel, painting the horizon in deep indigo. The rabbits huddled together in makeshift burrows, their ears twitching at distant sounds. Nearby, a portable lamp illuminated Traoré's small wooden table, where maps and soil samples were spread out. His team gathered in a semicircle, their voices low but determined. One engineer pointed to the contour lines on the map. "If we dig microcanals here and here, rainfall will pool instead of running off. The rabbits' activity will keep the soil loose, perfect for planting." Traoré nodded, his eyes never leaving the map. "This," he said, "isn't just an animal project, it's a people project. The rabbits work the soil, the people grow the food, and the land comes back to life." Far off, a rabbit hopped across the sand, a tiny shadow against the vast, silent desert. In real terms, rabbit-based agriculture is not a fantasy, it's a proven, underused method of land regeneration. Across parts of North Africa and Australia, rabbits have been used to aerate compacted soil, turning dry, unyielding ground into fertile planting zones. Burkina Faso's climate, with short, intense, rainy seasons and long dry spells, creates a unique challenge. Traditional large-scale irrigation is expensive and hard to maintain, but rabbits, with their natural burrowing, can loosen soil, improve water infiltration, and leave behind droppings rich in nitrogen, nature's own fertilizer. Economically, the numbers are compelling. A well-managed rabbit colony can reproduce quickly, providing both meat and fur for local markets. In some pilot projects, rabbit farming has boosted village income by up to 40% within a year. However, this is not without risks. Overpopulation can lead to crop damage, and without careful management, rabbits can become pests rather than partners. That's why Traoré's plan focuses on a controlled population of 15 million rabbits, paired with strict oversight, training for farmers, and rotational grazing zones to prevent overgrazing. If implemented correctly, the benefits could ripple across Burkina Faso, improving soil health, increasing food production, creating jobs, and reducing reliance on expensive imported fertilizers. For a nation determined to stand on its own feet, this isn't just about rabbits. It's about using local solutions to solve local problems, proving that innovation doesn't always come from billion-dollar technologies. Sometimes it comes with fur and whiskers. By early 2025, the rabbit program had moved beyond the pilot phase. Reports from Burkina Faso's Ministry of Agriculture confirmed that over 15 million rabbits were now part of the National Livestock Registry, a figure that startled even seasoned development experts. In rural provinces, families spoke proudly of how rabbit meat had become a steady source of protein, and the sale of pelts brought in extra income. More importantly, farmers noticed changes in their land. Soil that had been lifeless and cracked now held moisture for weeks. Native plants, once thought gone, began to reappear. International observers from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization visited the project sites. Their verdict was blunt. This is one of the fastest, most cost-effective land rehabilitation strategies we've ever seen. The story was no longer just about Burkina Faso, it was about a model that could reshape arid regions worldwide. One of the most striking examples came from the Sahelian village of Yalgo. Here, a cooperative of 120 families had started with just 500 rabbits 2 years earlier. Today, their herds had grown to more than 40,000. The villagers had built a small processing center to prepare rabbit meat for local markets and schools. Children now enjoyed protein-rich meals twice a week, a dramatic shift from the millet-heavy diet they once relied on. But the most remarkable change lay outside the village fences. The once barren land had transformed into a patchwork of greenery, with shrubs and grasses holding the soil in place. When the rainy season came, water soaked in, instead of running off in muddy torrents. For many, this wasn't just an agricultural project, it was the return of dignity, hope, and the belief that the land could heal. In the central plateau, near the town of Kudugu, another project took shape. Here, women's associations took the lead, managing breeding, feeding, and sales. Their approach was meticulous, keeping detailed records of lineage, health, and feed efficiency. They discovered that rabbit manure, when composted and mixed with crop residues, created a powerful organic fertilizer. Within a single planting season, sorghum yields increased by 40%. For the first time in decades, surplus grain-filled village granaries, the extra income from selling both meat and fertilizer, allowed families to send more children to school and invest in water storage systems. As one elder put it, "We are not just raising rabbits, we are raising the future." His words captured the essence of what was unfolding, a quiet, agricultural revolution, powered not by foreign aid, but by the hands of the people themselves. When news of Burkina Faso's 15 million rabbit project reached international media, the reaction was swift and divided. In Paris, London, and Washington, analysts dismissed it as symbolic, claiming rabbits could never shift a nation's economic trajectory. But in parts of Asia and Latin America, agricultural experts saw a blueprint for sustainable protein production. A delegation from Vietnam visited Ouagadougou, offering technical partnerships to improve breeding efficiency and export processing standards. Meanwhile, a Kenyan agritech startup proposed an app to link rabbit farmers directly to urban markets, bypassing middlemen entirely. Social media lit up with hashtags like #RabbitRevolution and #AfricaFeedsItself. Some mocked the idea, posting cartoons of Traoré's rabbit army, but others pointed out the hard numbers. In a single year, local meat production could double without importing a single kilo of foreign livestock. Burkina Faso had sparked a conversation far beyond its borders. In the corridors of the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, the Rabbit Initiative became a case study for sovereign agricultural transformation. Diplomats whispered that Traoré had found a way to challenge Western food imports without firing a single political shot by feeding his people with their own hands. European trade envoys grew uneasy. If Burkina Faso could scale this, what would stop other African nations from following suit and cutting dependence on EU meat exports? In a bold speech at a regional summit, Traoré declared, "We are proving that dignity does not require permission. Food is power, and we will grow it ourselves." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. The image of a president holding a snow-white rabbit in one hand and a loaf of Burkinabe bread in the other went viral. Burkina Faso's rabbits had become a symbol of defiance. Months after the first hutches were built, Burkina Faso's villages echoed with the soft rustle of hay and the quiet heartbeat of millions of rabbits. Children who once went to bed hungry now carried baskets of fresh meat to their families. Elderly farmers spoke with pride, saying this was the first time in decades they felt their land truly gave back. Economists noted that the rabbit industry's rapid growth had reduced meat imports by 40%, keeping millions of dollars circulating inside the country. It was not just a project, it was a movement. But Traoré knew the work had only begun. Standing before a sea of farmers, he raised his voice. "Every Burkinabe must understand, food sovereignty is not a gift from a leader. It is a responsibility of a people." The call spread far beyond Burkina Faso's borders, igniting conversations across Africa about local farming revolutions. And now, the question is yours to answer. If Burkina Faso can do this with rabbits, what could your community achieve with what's already in your hands?